Hey everybody, I'm Jeff. I grew up here in Wilmington, Delaware, but it's not really Wilmington. It's like right outside of Wilmington, the Mill Creek area. And one thing I gotta say is we're looking around here today, walking around down the park. It's beautiful because you see these leaves changing color. And I happened to be up here in Delaware just a couple weeks ago, not even just a week ago, literally. And there were so many leaves still on the trees, but they were all yellow and orange and all these different colors, and I forgot how beautiful it is. Down in Virginia now, that's one thing that we don't get, is the beautiful fall colors out in eastern Virginia. But we came down here to the park, in Sherwood Park, the neighborhood that I grew up in, to play some basketball. And also kind of go around and talk about what used to be here down in this park when I was a kid. Now, panning around here, let me paint the scene for you on a typical summer day, even a fall day, the way it would have been down here on the basketball court. You see the tennis courts, there'd always be some people there, usually amateurs, just hitting the ball back and forth. But over here on this side of the basketball court, there used to be a picnic table. And there would always be people down here sitting at the picnic table. There's a trash can next to it. They'd have a boom box on the table. For some reason, I remember the trash cans were these big yellow, like metal barrels. But there would always be people out here playing basketball, always. It was almost impossible to come down here and find an empty court. You'd have to come just at the right time. But in the middle of the day, from probably about 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock in the morning on, there would be people down here. When school was in session, after school, people would be down here playing basketball just about until the sun went down. So it was always pretty crowded down here on the court. Now, fortunately, when I was a kid, one thing we had that was cool is we had a basketball hoop right in the backyard. So we didn't come down here too much to play basketball, but on occasion we would. On occasion we'd come down here, there wouldn't be anybody here, and we'd play basketball. It was always a little more challenging because the hoop was a little higher. But one game that I liked to play, we used to like to play, was called Around the World. And we would play that down here. We'd mostly play it, like I said, in the backyard. We had stations. And you start here, and you shoot from these different stations, and your goal is to make it to each station all the way around the court to the other side. Make it through all the stations. And if you, let's say I make this first shot, I get here, I want to chance it, right? If I missed a shot, I can chance it. And then if I missed a chance, I got to go back to start. So that was just a fun game that we like to play. Maybe in a future video, we'll talk about some more of the basketball games we like to play. But right now, I'm going to take the first shot for Around the World, and I never said I was good at it. So walking down the park here, our first stop, as odd as it's going to be, it's going to be the storm drain down here. Because this is something that's been here for some time. And as kids, on hot summer days, for some reason always held an appeal. Now, we never dared go swimming in it because, for one, the water's not deep enough, and for two, it's pretty nasty water. It's literally like a storm drain. Like, all of the gutters in the neighborhood lead down into the drains, and they lead down here and right down to the storm drain. But it was a place where people would often come and graffiti on the walls and such. And here we go, taking a look down under the road. So here it is. And I remember that newer section. That's the newer section in the center. You can see where it kind of sticks out a little bit. I remember when they put that in. But yep, still got quite a bit of graffiti down here. And this tunnel here leads up to a grate that you can look down in from about halfway through the park. And I'll tell you, on days where it was pouring rain, this thing would be flowing with water. But when it wasn't pouring rain, I remember coming down here and we walked down this stream all the way down to Pathmark. This stream would go all the way down to Pathmark. But coming up along the bottom of the park here, one thing that I used to remember, and this is probably from the 80s, there used to be some monkey bars down here, and they were here up into the 90s, if I remember right. But it was just one single stretch of monkey bars where you climb up the ladder and go across to the other side. But there was also a pear tree that used to grow down here in this area. And one thing about this neighborhood, about the park, it used to have a lot of trees. The neighborhood in general used to have a lot of trees. There was a weeping willow tree right over in this area. There was a big, I don't remember if it was a walnut tree or what it was. There was another big tree that stood here. There was a big pine tree that stood here. And this land, it used to be all farmland. And one of the gentlemen, he used to come and walk his dog down here. One of the streets in the neighborhood is named after him, McClary. And we used to run into him walking his dogs down here. He had these two big Labradors. And he showed us where the farmhouse used to stand. It used to stand right over this way, kind of in the center of this open area, at least according to him. There also used to be an old bench here. And I think roughly if we come up here, okay, there's a big pit, all right? And this is where I believe the roots were torn up to this big oak tree or walnut tree, whatever it was. It was a huge tree though. And there's a metal bench that sat in front of it. And then right over this way, there was an old metal sliding board. Probably right around here, an old metal sliding board. And right about 3 yards in front of that fence used to be the swing set, the old swing set. And I remember the swing set, it had those swings kind of like the ones that you see on this swing set here, right? But it also had the baby swings, were not the comfortable rubber ones like they are now. It was these metal swings. And these metal swings, they had this little bar that kind of slid up. You sit the baby in there and slide it down. And they weren't the most comfortable, but it was a swing set. Now, one cool thing about this park is it's surrounded with chestnut trees. So there's still 2 chestnut trees there. One of them doesn't look like it's in good shape. There used to be another one up here. And like I said, right here is where the swing set used to stand. So we'd come down here in the fall. That's when chestnuts were good. And we would pick the chestnuts. But a lot of people knew about these chestnuts. So you'd have to come at the right time. Because if you waited too long, they'd all be down here. People would be down here with long sticks banging on the trees and getting the chestnuts down. But under the chestnut tree here, there used to be 2 metal horses in this area. They were probably like cast iron or something like that. But one of them was kind of a fat horse that I remember the spring was broken for as long as I can remember. It never really worked right. You'd sit on it, go back and touch the ground. And then the other one was kind of a smaller one, grayish color. And that one worked pretty good. But then they came and they replaced those horses with a big purple dinosaur that used to be here. And there was another thing that you ride. I forget what it was because it was a little bit after my childhood, but I do remember it. It was probably about 20 years ago or so. And then they had, around here, they had put over this way, one of those things that's kind of like a seesaw. It's got the springs on it, and it's got 4 different horses that you can sit on all across from each other, 4 different ways. And they put that over there for some time. And this playground had changed. Now, while the swing set was still over this way, and I believe the sliding board was still here, they had a big plastic slide here that was a 3-compartment slide that would come down. And it was plastic, blue plastic one. Bottom of it kind of reminded me of a foot. And that was here for some time. I'm not sure exactly when they tore that swing set down, when they tore the sliding board down. I want to say it was still here within the past 10 years even. And the bench, my grandmother used to sit there on that bench. and watch me swinging on the swings up there. All different times, in the evening, in the morning, summer days, cool fall days. But down here, the playground used to extend. Now, some time ago, I want to say once again, probably in the late 90s, there was another playground that they had right there where you can see there's kind of a clearing where they took it up. And this was another one of those plastic playgrounds that had like the plastic sliding boards. Oops, somebody lost their underwear. Kind of had like the plastic playground equipment, but it also had like the metal bridges that you would walk across and stuff. Kind of similar to this one, only smaller. But another thing they had, which I thought was cool, was some more monkey bars that stood right about here. And these monkey bars, I don't even know how to describe these things. If you picture like an octagon, and it goes up, it has like the bottom bar, the next bar, and you climb up to the top bar, and then the top bar had these 4 poles that came in, and poles that would go down in the center of this octagon shaped thing, and it would grab those poles and slide down, kind of like a fireman. It was a pretty cool thing to play, it really was. Now I gotta say, I remember a few things. This field right here, this is where we would play what was called Turkey Bowl. So we're coming up on Thanksgiving in just a couple days. And every year my brothers would come down here when I was, since I could remember. And when there was 5 of us, so I would always kind of be on whatever team had the ball, being a little kid, not being really able to do too much, I guess, at the time, so they thought. But we would play Turkey Bowl right here, and it would be our annual football game for Thanksgiving. And we would come down here and play, and my dad and mom would come down on the sidelines. We'd sit here and just watch the game go on. It would always be a light game of football, 2-hand touch, really good time. And one year, we played up this way, in front of the swings. The swings sat in front of that white fence, and in front of them there used to be a little bit of a field where you could play football, perhaps a little more level, as this one has a few pit holes in it and stuff like that. But I gotta say, there's a lot of memories in this park. I remember, like I said, coming here as a kid all my life and watching it change over the years. One thing I just thought of is we see the sign behind me here. There's the trash can, and then behind it there's the sign that says Sherwood Park. Right behind that sign there used to be this creepy old pine tree, and this was a gnarled old thing that stood tall, and you could climb from the bottom of it. You could start climbing up it. I would always climb up it, but it was a creepy old tree, and it almost looked like one of those trees that would come to life. So we always called it the Uwiu tree, as it was kind of a haunted tree, a ghost tree, a scary tree. Though we don't know of any ghost stories associated with it, really. Now, one thing I remember is for a little while, I was fascinated with golf balls, right? Not just fascinated with golf balls, not like just like, oh, golf balls are cool, but I liked hitting them. And up Del Castle, not far from here, there was a driving range that we would go to. Go up there and play mini golf. But I would purchase clubs at stores like Bradley's, Jamesway, and the Goodwill. And I remember at that point in time, this was back in the mid-90s, maybe 95-ish, they sold these golf balls that were glow in the dark. They had a light stick, a glow stick that you would break, a little tiny one, you'd slide it in there. And we would come down here at night, and we'd sit it on a tee between the basketball courts and the tennis court here, me and my brother, and we would crack this thing. And it would go, and it's a good thing we're, you know, somewhat careful with it, I guess, as much as we I don't know if we were really careful with it, as careful as we should have been, but we hit it from this tee, and you could see this thing go all the way through the sky, and it would land up behind the swing set, which was, like I said, in front of that white fence. And it was pretty cool to just see this glowing golf ball just go soaring through the night sky across the park. But the first time when I got a golf club and a golf ball, I came down here and I set it up here by the circle. And I hit it down across the park, and I wasn't expecting it to go as far as it did. I remember this golf ball, luckily there were no cars on Milltown Road here, but I remember this golf ball just probably to the left of that storm drain came right down in the middle of the road, and it bounced up and it was just bouncing in the middle of the road. And luckily no cars came between that time, as it is a fairly busy highway. So there's a few entrances to Sherwood Park here, and one of them, people will park their cars right here, right around where the sign is, and this sign wasn't always here. If they're coming here to play basketball, they'll often park there. But also if you're coming from the neighborhood, down the street, down Milltown Road, you can enter from right here. Now, since I was a kid, they planted this valley of pine trees here, and it's pretty neat. It's almost like a little valley that you can walk through. Nice place to come and walk the dog or whatever. But right at the end, there's the other entrance to the park. So if you're coming from that side of the neighborhood, you come in there. There used to be bushes all along the backs of these fences. And I remember this is where we would walk the dog. We'd bring him out of the house, right up the street there, just a few houses up, and come down, and we'd start at the bushes that were right up over there by that house, and they'd go all the way around. There were a few bushes behind where that split rail fence is there. There were a few bushes there, but they were like snowball bushes. They had the snowball flowers. And then the bushes along this fence behind the swings were more dense. And would walk the dog all the way down along there and do this whole square along the park. One thing that's a pretty interesting memory is this park, as I mentioned, way back it used to be all farmland. And if the whole neighborhood was farmland, if I'm standing in the right place, there used to be a tree. So I remember there was a weeping willow tree, and I think that was right over there. You can kind of see the area in the ground right at the edge of that shadow where it was. And then there was another tree that was a big pine tree right here. And I remember coming down here. See, that's something right there. Look, that's like the old root to it. But I remember coming down here and metal detecting. And I believe it was this pine tree. At the base of it, we found an engine block. I think my dad said it was to an old tractor. So the farmer back in the day, probably for some reason, buried the engine block down here. And that's probably still down there, underground. Now, as I mentioned, there used to be more trees down here, more bushes and such. And one game that we loved to play on summer evenings was flashlight tag. And it's been so long since we've played this that I have vague recollections. But I remember up along the fence here, there used to be some big pine trees, kind of like that one that you can still see there in the back. And you could climb up these pine trees. We would climb up them quite a way, and it'd be one of the hiding spots that we'd use during flashlight tag. But you could kind of go back there and be like a little fort. The neighbors would sometimes come out and yell at us and tell us to get out of the trees. But it was fun. Now, of course, whenever we'd come down the park here, we'd come down the street here across this, we called it the circle, the cul-de-sac. And in the summer, I remember the pavement would be so hot. We'd come down here barefoot. And that was a bad idea because the pavement would be so hot. And depending on what time of year it was, there would be these chestnut burrs on the ground here. And here's some chestnut burrs that are still here from the fall. I don't see any green enough to perhaps have something in them, but these things, they'll get you. They're picky, yeah. So you got to watch where you're walking because they'll get in your feet. Now the other entrance from the park was right down this little alleyway here. Well, it's not really an alley, but it's a path that comes between the houses, and it comes down by the tennis courts. And this is one way that we could come into the park depending on where you're entering it from. But this yard right here, see how it's really long and goes all the way back here. Before I was born, when my parents moved into this house, that was all the parkland back down there. And you could go right in there, and there was a gate that went into our backyard, and you could walk right from our backyard right out into the park. So pretty cool. And this is the storm drain. I was never quite daring enough to do it, but if you see the water's running into a tunnel down there, okay, and that tunnel right there comes out way down there. So I think what we'll do is an experiment. We used to talk to each other. You can hear the echo down there. Let's see how that works.
Isn't that where the tenting is?
Yeah, what you're gonna do is you're gonna go down there, right? And then the tunnel that comes up this way, you're gonna yell down it, right?
Okay.
Yell when you get there, and then I'll yell back to you. We'll see if we can hear each other.
Okay.
Yeah, there you have it. So you can hear it. Can you hear me, Alex?
So my dad's right over there. Okay, I hear you.
Hello!
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right. All right, come on back up.
So I've heard tell of people walking up that tunnel from there all the way up to the grid here, and I've never really been daring enough to do it. And especially now, it's probably a bad idea because there's quite a few little, looks like sinkholes along the top of the tunnel here from the ground. But before we head out of the park, let's go up and see what's here today. See what the modern things are here at the park. And I gotta say, there's a few things, but it's not quite as fun as the old monkey bars, as the old squeaky swing set, and the metal slide. Those were some good times. And those horses that you could ride on. Now they still do have some spring riders here.
Yeah.
We'll get Alex to test them out to see how they work out though.
But you know what? So it was so cool because it had like different slides, also like sections. So you could have like a metal and like a plastic slide.
Oh, wait a minute. You remember that slide?
Yeah, I remember
The
all
three-part
slides.
slide that used to sit over here?
Yep.
Yeah?
I remember everything from that park. It
And then
was
the
so
metal
fun.
slide here?
That was so fun.
Yep, that metal slide. When I was a kid, I found a Susan B. Anthony dollar underneath the slide.
Ooh.
Gotcha. All right, so here we have a ladybug. Okay. Yeah, not bad, not bad. Not as realistic as the horse, I gotta say, but it's something. We also got a quad runner, a grasshopper, and a bee. And the bee and the grasshopper look like they're two-seaters. So how fun is that?
It's supposed to be.
Yep, the bee and the grasshopper.
You see that at every park.
And we got the monkey bars coming across here. Go ahead. Oh, wait a minute, before we go that way, we've got a little short slide here.
Yep. And then we got.
Okay. And
we
some
go-
twisty bars here.
Yeah, you climb up those, I think.
Let's see if I can, these are kind of confusing here a little bit. I guess you got to kind of come out this way,
I think you're supposed to go down, and like most of the time, people go down it.
then maybe twist around like this. Okay. That's quite a cool thing, huh? Let me
Yeah.
see if I can come back up it. feel like you want to keep going this way.
Yeah,
but
you
can't.
do.
At some point, you got to turn your feet and come this way. All right.
And so we also have like a little thing that you can go down. The only
The
problem,
fireman pole.
yeah, the only problem is this thing's to hurt your hands a lot.
Now this one's interesting. It's quite textured, as I see here.
Yeah.
The other ones were kind of smooth. It's not the same as those ones we used to have down there that sat on that, had the 4 poles that came down. I mean, that was a cool thing. And the curvy slide.
Yep.
All right, there we go, down the slide. I wonder if I could take that slide.
I mean, you could. It might be a little slim on your butt.
You think so?
Yeah.
Let's see what happens here. Oh boy. Okay, here we go. Oh, yep. There we are. We made it. And one thing we used to do when we were kids with the swing set that sat right over here is we used to jump off the swings. Such a fun time. It's probably outlawed now at school playgrounds, but jumping off the swings was always a good time.
Okay, here we go.
All right, there you go. Okay, now I'm gonna do something. If you'll kind of stand here, get a side view. All right, a side view.
So like this?
Yeah, that's fine. I'm gonna do something that we used to do, and I might very well get seriously hurt. Okay, so that's always good to have the camera rolling when that happens. And it's always good to be recording on a phone in case you need to call 911. But we used to go like this, and ooh, I haven't
Oh
done
yeah,
this
go
in a long time.
backwards. You
Flip
taught me
back.
that.
Here we go. Here goes nothing. Boy! Woo! Did it!
Now I kind of want to try this.
That was a good time.
Yeah, that was. So this is probably my second time doing it. I don't know how good I'm going to be at it. I might hurt myself, but
And who showed you how to do that?
my dad.
Yeah, that's right. He's the one with the camera right now. There. Oh, okay. He did a fair job of teaching you how to do that. Absolutely. But there you have it, Sherwood Park. Growing up here in Wilmington, Delaware. I'm going to do a few installments of videos like this. We'll go around and show some things that used to be in places around Wilmington, Delaware, some memories from the 80s and 90s, growing up in this area. And I hope you join us and see what it used to be like.